We are talking tonight about the Golden Rule. It is one of the best known and yet one of the least applied passages in all of the New Testament. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus is preaching the Sermon on the Mount, and when he gets to verse 12 of Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says this: "So, whatever you wish others to do to you, or whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets." There are only a couple of places in the Bible where Jesus says things like this. This is the law and the prophets. One of the other places where he says this is in Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40, where he says all the law is fulfilled in the idea that we love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. You remember? And so when they ask him, what's the greatest command of the law? Love your neighbor as yourself, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So it is in Matthew 7, verse 12. Whatever you would have others to do to you, whatever you wish others to do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. The Golden Rule. It's great to memorize. I hope that you have it memorized. It's great to teach young children to memorize. I hope that you'll help your kids at home to learn and apply this passage. It is hard, it is difficult sometimes to apply. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. This class is entitled Devotions in Matthew. And sometimes you just need to stop and think about one verse of Scripture and how it applies to your life and the many different ways in which it touches every part of our experience. When you think about the characteristics of the Golden Rule, by the way, if you've got a handout, this is going to go very fast, this part, and then the latter part of the handout, when we talk about areas of application, that's going to take the bulk of our class. So characteristics of the Golden Rule. When you look at what Jesus says, in the first place, it demands action. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Good intentions are nice, but good intentions do not help, they do not bless. Good intentions are not action. Jesus says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, there are other religions that have similar words or similar commandments like the Golden Rule, but most other religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, some of the others, they basically have a rule similar to this, but it says, don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. Said another way, it's kind of like do no harm. Don't do anything that you don't want anybody else to do to you. But that's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, do unto others what you want them to do to you. It's a positive statement, an active statement. It carries us beyond just sentiment and good feelings, and it demands that we show our love in action. I've thought about this principle a lot over the years. Love is not love, really, until it's expressed. You can have good sentiments towards someone, you can have good feelings towards someone, but you've got to express it, or it's not really love. It's not the fullness of love. It's not the consummation, the flower of love, if you will. And that's what everybody looks for when they're thinking about love. Say it to someone, show it to someone, express it, then it's love. So, it demands action. Secondly, characteristics of the Golden Rule, it settles 100 questions. Whatever you'd have men to do to you, do also to them. 100 different questions, difficult questions. And Jesus goes on to say in the verse, it's the law and the prophets. They are summed up in all of this. What God wanted us to do to our neighbor from the beginning is summed up in the Golden Rule. So, this rule, Matthew 7:12, the Golden Rule, can be applied to our families, to our marriages. It can be applied to our friends and our friendships. It can be applied to our neighbors. It can even be applied to the way we treat our enemies. It can be applied in every situation. Strangers, unbelievers, dishonorable people. You can treat them with the Golden Rule, and you can know, based on the fact that you're using this principle, that you're doing what Jesus wants you to do. I love that. It settles 100 different questions. It's like a pocket knife. When I was a kid, I had pocket knives, and I thought that they were just the coolest thing ever. It had a corkscrew on there, and it had a knife on there, and it had a bottle opener on there, and a spoon on there, and I thought, man, I could just do anything with this. I never used it for anything. But the Golden Rule is like a pocket knife that is useful, because you can pull out your Golden Rule, and you can apply it to all kinds of circumstances. Sometimes, when time is short, you're in the heat of the moment, you're in a difficult circumstance, or sometimes when a decision just has to be made and there's no time to consult a friend, there's no time to go seek out an elder or a preacher or somebody that can give advice, you don't have time to sit down and open up the Bible and peruse all that it has to say about the situation you're in, this rule can guide proper conduct in times like that. It settles 100,000 different questions. Treat others as you would be treated, and it is unlikely that you will ever be doing the wrong thing in your relationships. Next, characteristics of the Golden Rule. It is clear and it is plain. I do this with the young people sometimes. You know what everybody's favorite subject is to talk about? Themselves. It's everybody's favorite subject. We are wrapped up in ourselves. We like to talk about ourselves. We think about what we like and what we prefer and what we want. And so what Jesus does is he takes that concept, because I spend a lot of time thinking about what I enjoy and what I prefer, and Jesus takes that concept and he says, John, you're kind of wrapped up in yourself. Let me show you what to do with that. Take the things that you prefer and you enjoy and you like, and as you would have people to do to you, you use that self-interest, you use that and turn it around and serve others. And so it's clear and it's plain. What standard would you have me to use, Lord, in the way I treat the people around me? Do what you'd have them do to you, John. That's the standard, and that's about as clear and practical and plain as it can possibly be. And then when you think about the characteristics of the Golden Rule, it's reasonable. What's unfair about this? What's unjust about this? What you want people to do for you, do for them. The things that you would prefer they did for you, make sure that those are the things that you are doing to them. It's a principle of perfect justice, and every man can be kind of his own judge in regard to it. When I walk away from a relationship or an interaction or a conflict, I can ask myself, John, that was a tough situation, that was a tough conflict. Did you do to others as you would have them do unto you? It's reasonable. Questions or thoughts? When you think about the Golden Rule, before I move on, that which pleases me is likely to be pleasing to others. You know, I talk to a lot of people about a lot of different situations in their lives, and one thing that I find is that when we're suffering especially, we kind of feel like we're the only one that feels the way we do. It's a human nature thing. We kind of feel like we're the only one that experiences things the way we do. And newsflash, it's just not true. Other people have the exact same feelings and the exact same experiences that you do. And that's a wonderful insight for life. Because the things that please us and the things that bring joy to our hearts, those are going to bring joy to other people's hearts. It's not complicated. Characteristics of the Golden Rule. That which is right for me is likely to be what's right for others. If we're asking questions about what's just, what's fair, what's right, how do you treat somebody equitably? How do you treat somebody fairly? Well, whatever's right for me, that's probably the standard I need to use in the way I treat and deal with others. Again, that which we claim from others, the expectations we have of others, that's what we may reasonably expect others to claim from us. Think about that. Sometimes our expectations of others are way too high. If you're married, especially consider this. As married partners, sometimes we expect a lot more from our spouse than we ourselves would be willing to give if they were demanding the same thing of us. We need to be careful about that. The Golden Rule says, treat others the way you would want to be treated. It settles 1,000 different questions. I love the Golden Rule. There's a reason why it's called the Golden Rule. Solid gold. It's pure, it's pristine, it's valuable, it's precious. It's all those things. And I genuinely wish more people would take this principle to heart, that we would express it and live it in our relationships with others. But more than I wish that, Jesus Christ wishes that for you. He wants you to put this into practice in your life. Questions, thoughts? Devotions in Matthew. All right. If there's no questions, if there's no comments that you want to make, Let's talk about a number of areas where the golden rule needs to be applied. We're going to spend the rest of our time this evening just talking practically. Areas where the golden rule needs to be applied. Some things for us to think about. If you got your Bible open to Matthew 7, you might just look at verses 3 and 4. Area number 1. We ought to use the golden rule when we're giving criticism and when we're receiving criticism. Matthew 7, verse 3. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Jesus is talking about criticism. Here, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to make things better. I'm trying to fix you. What's going on with you? You got a speck in your eye, brother. And Jesus is saying, we tend to, when we criticize others, we tend to criticize them. We tend to see specks in their eyes because of the fact that we are aware on some level that we have a log in our own. We need to use the golden rule in how we offer and how we receive criticism. There was a full colonel who showed up one day at the barracks to give an inspection of the troops. And those privates, those grunts in the service, they were just as nervous as they could be as the colonel walked down the line and looked them up and down. And he came to a certain soldier, and he looked at the soldier and he said, button up that pocket, soldier. Button that pocket up. And the soldier was taken aback for just a minute, and he said, you mean right now, sir? Yes, I mean right now, the colonel said. And so with a trembling hand, the soldier reached out and he grabbed the colonel's pocket and he buttoned it. Sometimes what we see in others is really just a reflection of what's going on with us. I say it this way, the things that tend to annoy us about other people are probably the things that we have a problem with ourselves. Small specks in other people seem major, while the planks in our own eye, we've got a reason for that. It's excusable. I've got a reason why I've got a plank. And so, as we give criticism, it's not a spiritual gift, by the way. When I read the Bible, it talks about spiritual gifts, gifts of hospitality and of kindness and mercy and things like that. Criticism never makes the list. Although I think some people think that my spiritual gift is criticism. That's what I'm good at. I can point out what's wrong in a situation. I can point out the flaws. If that's your one talent, you're probably in the right to go bury that talent. Okay, that's if you're the one talent man and criticism is what you got, go bury that one. That'd be better off. When you give criticism, is it true? Is it kind? Is it appropriate? Those kinds of questions. And when you receive criticism, because all of us will, is it true? Before I hit the, DEFCON 5 button and let's go to full alert, let's ask, is this really true? What's being said? A private can criticize a colonel, and it can still be true. That's the way the world works. Don't get too caught up in who you are. Use the golden rule. Second, areas where the golden rule needs to be applied. Giving and receiving encouragement. In Acts 4:36, there was a man named Joseph, but they called him Barnabas. That was his nickname, Barnabas. What does Barnabas mean? Son of encouragement. Barnabas means son of encouragement because Barnabas was the kind of guy that you loved to see coming. He was the kind of guy that you wanted to be by your side because Barnabas was always looking for what's good. He was always looking for reasons and ways in which he could encourage others. People have a habit of becoming what you encourage them to be, not what you nag them to be. They have a habit of becoming what you encourage them to be, not what you nag them to be. Those of us who are parents ought to think about that principle. Our young people, our children, yes, sometimes they need correction, sometimes they need discipline, but when was the last time that you encouraged your children? saw potential in them, and encouraged and cheered for them as they continued to walk on life's way. We need to use the golden rule. I was reading about this, and I came across Maya Angelou, the author. She said this: people will never forget, or they will forget what you said, and they will forget eventually what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Why should I use the golden rule? Because when I give encouragement, it helps people to feel this is encouraging. For God's sake, for the sake of Jesus Christ, let's be encouragers. Let's be givers of encouragement. There's a little boy that went up to his daddy and he said, "Daddy, let's go play darts." He and his daddy had been playing darts. And the little boy said this way, "I'll throw the darts and you say, 'Good job.' That'll be your job, Dad." Everybody needs a cheerleader. Everybody needs an encourager. And I have never yet met anybody who does not appreciate and enjoy sincere encouragement. Have you? I've never met anybody who says, I don't need that. Give encouragement because you like to receive encouragement. But flip that around. When somebody encourages or compliments or says something kind to you, all of us, listen carefully, need to think about how to receive encouragement. Because if somebody tells you, "You did a wonderful job, you are very talented," if somebody says something like that to you, what's our natural response? What do we typically do? No. It wasn't good. And basically what we end up doing is we end up starting a debate with somebody who is genuinely trying to encourage us, and now we've got a debate going on because you said that somebody did a good job, and they said, "Oh no, it wasn't a good job," and now we have to talk about what kind of job it was. Nobody wants to have that conversation. So when someone encourages you, compliments you, is kind to you, receive it graciously, say thank you, take those words to heart. You know, we tend to remember the negative things that are said to us and about us, and we tend to forget the encouraging things. I would submit that that's a trick, a tool of Satan himself. The idea that we remember the bad stuff that people say to us and about us, and we forget the good stuff. Receive that encouragement and hold on to it. It's the golden rule. How would you want somebody else to receive the encouragement you gave? You received theirs that same way. How about dealing with conflict? Turn to Luke chapter 12, verses 13 and 14. We're just going everywhere preaching the word tonight. Luke 12, verses 13 and 14. A man comes to Jesus while he's teaching, and this man says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Luke 12, verses 13 and 14. And Jesus responds, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he goes on to warn about covetousness, and he tells the parable of the rich fool, the one who didn't think about God or his neighbor, but just thought about himself. In dealing with conflict, we need to have wisdom, and we need to apply the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated. I would submit to you that here in Luke chapter 12, verses 13 and 14, by refusing to get involved in the conflict, listen, Jesus was treating this man the way Jesus would have wanted to be treated. Because if Jesus was so wrapped up in material things and so wrapped up in stuff that he was going to have a conflict with his family member, Jesus says, "I'm not your judge. Who made me the judge and arbitrator over this kind of dispute?" Sometimes the golden rule means that we refuse to get involved in conflict. Sometimes the golden rule means that we have to, again, a lot of parenting lessons here, pick your battles wisely or you'll be fighting all the time. The golden rule demands that of us. Proverbs 15, verse 1, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." So when there are disagreements, address them with fairness, address them with understanding. Apologize when you're wrong. If you've never apologized to somebody, if you've never asked forgiveness of somebody, golden rule yourself. When somebody wrongs you, don't you want them to acknowledge it and apologize? If you're not in the habit of doing that when you're wrong, how is that the golden rule? Dealing with conflict. Don't get too caught up in conflict. Make amends. Apologize. Confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. James chapter 5, verse 16. Areas where the golden rule needs to be applied. Any comments, questions that you'd like to add to things we're saying? Just making some applications. I'm telling you, it's like a pocket knife, but it's not like my pocket knife when I was a kid. This one is useful. This one is handy. This one you need to take with you. All right. Areas where the golden rule needs to be applied. Next. Treating people with gentleness or tenderness. You don't need to turn to this one because we sing it in Kids Sing all the time. Ephesians 4:32. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, and forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. The basis for the way we treat each other is how God has treated us in Jesus Christ. That verse tells us that. But we are to be tender-hearted. We are to be gentle toward one another, treating people with tenderness. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. You guys know who I'm talking about? We've got a little bit. Yeah, okay. Mr. Rogers. He was once approached by a fan who said, Mr. Rogers, I appreciate your tenderness and gentleness. I wish that I could be as tender and as gentle as you are. And Fred Rogers responded, it takes courage to be that tender. Because you make yourself vulnerable. You open up your heart to all kinds of potential pain and potential hurt when you treat people the way that you see me treating them. One writer said, tenderness, gentleness is not the absence of strength. We tend to think that it is. Jesus was gentle and nobody would accuse him of not being strong. It's not the absence of strength, it is the restraint of our strength in the name of love. Being tender, being gentle with people is restraining our strength in the name of love. There was an elderly lady in the line at a store, and she was having trouble getting the correct change out of her pocketbook. And there was a man standing behind her in line. Golden rule. How do you treat somebody that is slowing you down in your day? How do you treat somebody who is having a difficult time functioning and getting things done in her world? A lot of people in our society now especially, doesn't it seem like we're just meaner to each other as a society? We're angrier and we're more impatient with each other as a society? What does the golden rule do? The golden rule gently steps in and helps and says, Can I help you get some change out of your purse there so that you can make this sale complete? Helping her to find the right change. Responding with grace instead of retaliating. Compassion and tenderness are not signs of weakness, they're rather signs of strength. And we need more of that in the way that we treat others. Questions, thoughts? Yep. Absolutely. Yep. No, sometimes just talking about the general principle. Yeah. Sometimes those quarters just go where they go. They're hard to get. Absolutely. Apply the golden rule. How about treating people with respect? Go back to 1 Kings chapter 12. Look at verses 13 through 16. Rehoboam, he watched his dad, Solomon, and his dad was a great king, and his dad had high taxes, and his dad built some ornate, beautiful wonders of the world, literally. And Rehoboam spent his entire life watching Solomon do all those things. And so when Rehoboam got to be king, Rehoboam thought, wow, I've been given a kingdom that's like a Ferrari. I'm going to take this thing for a test drive, and I'm not going to go 20 miles an hour. So he talks to the people, and the people say, your father's taxes and your father's administration, Rehoboam, they were just burdensome. And we'd like for a little bit of relief to come our way. What do you think? And in 1 Kings chapter 12 and verse 13, Rehoboam speaks to them. He answers them. And here's what he says. He says, "The king answered the people harshly, and forsaking the counsel that the old men had given him, he spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, 'My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions.' So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of affairs brought about by the Lord, that he might fulfill his word, which the Lord spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat." Rehoboam did not listen to and respect the people that he had been given by God to be king over. You can easily judge the character of an individual by how they treat people who can do nothing for them. How do you judge character? Well, how does somebody treat people that really can't contribute, can't add anything to their lives? How do you treat people that are forgotten or left behind by society? You can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. In 1 Peter 2, verse 17, Peter tells Christians to honor everyone. We ought to give honor, communicate a sense of respect and a sense of worth and a sense of value. That's what it means to respect or honor somebody. We ought to honor everyone. We ought to honor the king, it says in 1 Peter 2, verse 17. And so, when we think about this, treating people with respect, I hope that you want people to respect you. I suspect you do if you're a human being. We want people to honor us and respect us and appreciate and value us. If that's what you want from others, that's what you are to give to others. There is a nasty tendency that we have, especially at home. There is a nasty tendency that we have, if someone disrespects me, well, I'm not going to give respect to you. You're going to have to earn it from me. That's not the golden rule, folks. The golden rule says, even if the people that are close to you, the people that you live with, or the people that you work with, even if those people don't give you any respect, what should you do? What does the golden rule say? As you would have them do unto you, do also to them. Isn't that what it says? So the golden rule is saying, when it comes to this issue of respect, or when it comes to any of these other issues, the golden rule is saying, if you would like somebody to respect you, don't make it like this war of attrition. Rather, you be the Christian, you be the child of God, you be the disciple of Jesus, and you give respect regardless of whether somebody gives it to you. That's Jesus' way. Yes, sir.
I think in the class that I teach, I share with our students that not only teaching people with respect, but I think treating people with dignity
Yes.
and respect. Dignity is when you respect them. Respect is how you treat them. We have to look at it, especially as a Christian. Nobody is below me, nor am I above anybody. We're human beings, so we're equal to one another. Therefore, we should treat everyone with dignity and respect.
People have, if you couldn't hear Brother Stroud, people have dignity. It's an inherent dignity. We have dignity because God created us in His image, Genesis 1, 26 and 27. And because God created us in His image, all of us, every human being has dignity. And we ought to treat each other that way. Absolutely right. How about listening to others, since we're talking about respect? Why spend time on the golden rule, John? What's your thinking here? Well, number one, all of us need help applying this. But number two, I said it already once tonight. I think society around me is kind of losing its mind when it comes to civility and dignity and respect and treating one another with kindness. I don't see as much of that as I did in 2019. I don't know if it's COVID. I don't know if it's just people are on edge about a lot of things. I don't know what it is. But you know, the dominant emotion, I talk to a lot of people, obviously, as a preacher. The dominant emotion, I would say, in the last 5 years that I have experienced, people bringing and visiting to me about, the dominant emotion is anger. It wasn't like that before 2020. I mean, there are angry people, and there always have been, but it's dominant. And why spend time on all this? Because the golden rule will do a lot to help with the things that really ail us as a society, but also as Christians living within this society. Listening genuinely to others. Look at Ephesians 4, verses 1 and 2. Ephesians 4, verses 1 and 2. Paul writes to his brethren about unity. He wants them to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Ephesians 4 and verse 3. But before he says that, in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, I therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. What does it look like to walk worthy, Paul? He says a worthy walk, verse 2, is with all humility and gentleness, already talked about that, with patience, bearing with one another in love. I would submit you cannot do any of those things for any length of time without developing the habit of listening to others. When people are heard, when you hear people, you love people. Write that down in your notes. To be listened to is to feel loved. And sometimes, marriages, families, sometimes what our families really need from us is not one more trip to a fun place. What our families really need from us is for us to listen to them. Don't you want people to hear you? Golden rule. As you would have others to do unto you, do also to them. Become a good listener. There was a little girl tugging at her daddy's arm because he was preoccupied with what was on the screen in front of him, and she kept tugging, and he kept trying to brush her away, and she kept tugging, and finally a light bulb went on in that man's head. And he put down his screen, and he got down on his knees, and he looked his daughter in the eye, and he listened to her. And that little girl glowed. She was thrilled that her daddy took the time to look her in the eye and to pay attention to what was important to her. And you know what? If you've been around 3-year-olds, a lot of things that are important to 3-year-olds really aren't that important in the grand scheme of things, but it's important to them. And to listen is to make them feel loved. We need to be better listeners. Stephen Covey says, most people don't listen with the intent to understand. Most people listen with the intent to respond. Somebody's talking to us and we're just thinking about what we're going to say. The golden rule. Listen so that you might understand. It's essential to unity. It's essential to being a child of God and walking a worthy walk. Questions, thoughts? Why should I listen to you? I'm just going to give you a solution.
So we just move on.
Sure, yeah. Sometimes we're trying to solve problems and that's really not what people want. Yeah. I read a lot of books about communication, and there are different kinds of conversations. Some conversations are about who are we? And some conversations are about what's really wrong here, and we're trying to identify what's wrong. And some conversations are about let's find a solution. But it's important in a conversation to kind of identify which conversation you're in. They're not all the same. And husbands, as you're talking to your wives, they're usually not asking you, how do we solve this? If you haven't figured that out, that's free advice. They're usually not asking, how do we solve this? They're usually just wanting you to understand their emotional state and those kinds of things. And yeah, this is really difficult, I understand. So, golden rule, apply it to your life. Next, areas where a golden rule needs to be applied. How about handling differences in matters of opinion? Turn to Acts chapter 15 and verse 39. We're going to have conflicts in the church. We're going to have conflicts with our brethren. And not all those conflicts are matters of faith. Not all those conflicts involve somebody losing their soul. So in Acts chapter 15, verse 39, here are Paul and Barnabas. And I'm amazed and I'm thankful that this passage is in Scripture, because Paul and Barnabas were great men of God. They were missionaries. They had worked together previously. They knew each other's idiosyncrasies. They knew each other's, rising up and going to bed. They knew all those things about each other, and they wanted to work together again, but there was a sharp disagreement over John Mark. Should we take him with us or not? And the Bible says the disagreement was so intense that they They parted ways. It's not a matter of being saved or being lost. It's just a matter of opinion. It's insightful and instructive to think about what Paul and Barnabas did not do. They didn't go from church to church as they went out in their separate directions, talking bad about the other brother. They didn't get their pen and start writing all kinds of incendiary things about one another to other congregations. They didn't plant the seeds of doubt and suspicion about one another in their conversations with others. The golden rule: as you would have others to do to you, do also to them. There are some things among the Lord's people that are matters of opinion. Let's identify those. And by the way, what's a litmus test for a matter of opinion? It's basically this. Is a person going to lose his soul if he's involved in this, if he does this? Is this something that God says is blatantly, flagrantly sinful and they're going to lose their soul over this? If the answer is no, you're probably dealing with a matter of opinion. You want an example? People get really wound up sometimes about how you school your children. Should you homeschool them? Should you put them in public school? And people get really wound up on both sides of that debate. Let's use the golden rule in the way we treat each other in regard to that and any other matter of opinion. Handling differences, golden rule. Handling differences in matters of faith. Some things people will lose their souls over. If they keep believing, if they keep practicing some things, they're going to lose their soul. In Acts 17:23, Paul, even when he was preaching to some pagan idolaters on Mars Hill in Acts 17, Paul says, "Men of Athens, I see that you are very religious." He started with a compliment. "I was walking around your fine city and I saw this one idol. I saw all these idols that you've built, and I saw this one that says, 'To the unknown God.' And the one that you're worshiping in ignorance, you don't know who that God is. I'm going to talk to you about him." If ever there was an example of the golden rule in matters of faith, that's it. He didn't come at him with the sledgehammer right off the bat and say, "You pagan idolaters, you should have known. It's obvious that there is a God and he's not an idol made with hands." And, you know, Paul could do that. That's not the way he approached his audience. Matters of faith. Look at Jude, verses 22 and 23. The one-chapter book of Jude. It's right in front of Revelation. And Jude talks about false teachers, and he talks about these troubles in the church that come. And here's what he says in Jude, verse 22. He says to Christians, "Have mercy on those who doubt." So you're talking about different classes, different categories of people that are struggling with unbelief. Have mercy on those who doubt. There are some people that are just confused. They're doubting. And what should the church do with them? The church should have mercy on them. But then look at verse 23. "And save others by snatching them out of the fire. To others show mercy with fear, hating even the garment stained by the flesh." Some people are actively promoting things that are false, that are untrue. Some people believe and hold those things, but they really, they're not making a big issue out of some of it. And then some are just doubting and questioning. And Jude is giving you different ways to deal with some of those situations. What's your point, John? Golden rule. Whatever you'd have others to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. If somebody is in the fire, snatch them out of the fire, hating even the garment defiled. Be careful, though, how you deal with some of these differences. It's not one size fits all in every situation. Areas where the golden rule needs to be applied: our personal work ethic. One worker said, "People who believe the dead never come back ought to be around my office at closing time." All right, you missed that one. The dead come back to life. When it comes to work, other people are depending on us to do good work. The Proverbs writer says, remember our reading of Proverbs, "Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the lazy man to the one who sends him." Proverbs 10, verse 26. The Bible tells us in Ephesians 6, verses 5 and 6, that we are to do our best in our work, not as pleasing men, but rather as pleasing the Lord. Our goal is to please God. Our goal is to work in such a way that God looks at us and says, well done. That's the golden rule. If you had a company and you hired an employee, wouldn't you want an employee that shows up on time? Wouldn't you want an employee that does his best and doesn't complain all day? Wouldn't you want an employee that looks for things that are not his job and takes care of some of those things because he is concerned about the company and the profitability of the company? That's what a Christian does. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might, Ecclesiastes 9 verse 10. Why? Because we're golden rule people. We're people that are living by this ethic, by this commandment that our Lord has given to us. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I want to be the kind of employee for others that I would want as an employee for myself. How about the manner of our service? The way we serve the people of God, the way we serve our families. Philippians 2:14 says, do all things without grumbling and complaining. If somebody serves me, I would much prefer that they serve me willingly and cheerfully. I would much rather they be like the Chick-fil-A people that say, my pleasure, than the people at some other restaurants that shall remain nameless that kind of give you a grunt and a nod and act like you're inconveniencing their day by even driving through. How do you want to be served? Well, that's the way that you serve others. 2 Corinthians 9 verse 7. God loves a cheerful giver. Even God, in our service to Him, wants us to give cheerfully. He wants our attitude and our demeanor in the way we serve and the way we give to be a cheerful one. So golden rule service, it's willing and it's cheerful and it's enthusiastic. Golden rule service doesn't wait to be asked. Golden rule service looks for opportunities, looks for places to find a need, and then tries to meet them. Areas where the golden rule needs to be applied. Last one. Sharing the gospel. In 2 Kings 7 verse 9, there were some lepers, some beggars, that found a deserted enemy camp. And, they're the only ones there, and they were taking the food. They were enjoying a feast because there was a famine in their city. And then they suddenly realized, they came to themselves and realized that their countrymen were nearby. And here's what they said in 2 Kings 7 verse 9. We are not doing right. This day is a day of good news. If we are silent and wait until the morning light, punishment will overtake us. Now therefore come and let us go and tell the king's household. They use the golden rule. How would we want to be treated if we were still starving in the city? And therefore they went into the city and they told the good news of the feast that was left behind by the enemy that fled. There's a spiritual feast that God has provided. There's abundance, there's forgiveness, there's pardon, there's joy to be found in Jesus Christ. The golden rule, brothers and sisters, demands that we open our mouths and talk to others. If you were lost, wouldn't you want somebody to say something? If you were apart from Christ and the person sitting next to you in the cubicle was a Christian, wouldn't you want them to be courageous enough to at least once try to talk to you about Jesus? Wouldn't you want that? We ought to use the golden rule in our sharing of the gospel because that's what we would want someone to do for us. The golden rule, we have committed it to memory. Let us commit it to our lives. Let's live it. Let's not just talk about it. Thanks very much for your kind attention this evening.